you to everybody for making the time. We understand that particularly in this period of remote working, carving out an hour in your day, an hour is more valuable than it ever was previously. So we do appreciate that you've taken this chance to spend your lunchtime with us. Just a little bit about Bruntwood Spark before they start. They've laid on this session, and they just wanted us to let you know that it's a platform that can help you access all the stuff that might help grow your business and help you achieve your goals as you embark on what could be an interesting and potentially exciting 2021. There's plenty of courses, webinars and workshops available there for you. So if you want to check that out, then please do so. We are 420 million. There are 3 of us. One is called Josie. She's not here. Your session today will be led by me and also Dan, who I'll hand over to now.
Thank you. So, as you've no doubt seen for the invite to this session, this is about how we can be better, better, faster, smarter. That wasn't a good start, was it? And to do that, we want to talk about a skill that is crucial to all of us. One that's been described as the most important skill of the 21st century. But despite its importance, it is a skill that is increasingly under threat, as we want to delve into today. When you log on and open your laptop each morning, the unique asset that you bring to your business is the power of your mind. Your ability to build solutions for your clients, to connect ideas, to create something new, and to deliver intelligent, valuable work that has a positive impact on your company. Your mind is your superpower. And what we want to share with you today will shine a spotlight on the skill that either maximizes or puts under huge threat our capacity to make the most of that superpower and deliver brilliant work. And that skill, as you may have seen from the blurb for this event, is the skill of focus. Focusing your attention on one thing and holding it there. Now, that might sound a bit underwhelming given the build-up I've just given it. Focus is pretty simple. It's just concentrating. It's something we all take for granted and that we can switch on whenever we need to, or so it seems. But before we assume that focus is just a given that we can all do whenever we want, I just want you to pause for a moment and think about, when was the last time you read a news article in full without stopping to look away at something else as you did it? Do you tend to watch a TV program with your mobile in your hand and flick between the two things? Can you concentrate on one work task without getting distracted by pinging emails or messages or pop-ups? A lot of us recognize that we struggle more nowadays to concentrate and focus than we used to. There seems to be more distraction and more demand on our time than there ever was before. But few of us really comprehend the extent to which we're losing this fundamental skill of focus. So this session is all about how focus erodes our capacity for deep, sustained, perceptive attention, and more importantly, what we can do about it. So to do this, there are 4 areas we're going to cover, each quite brief, but equally important. We want to start by sharing some science, some neuroscience in particular, about what we're learning about focus and its evil twin, distraction. We want to talk about why this isn't just interesting and maybe insightful, but why it's vital that we act on it now. And we also want to share why it's so important, why focus is the key to unlocking our brilliance. And then from a practical point of view, we'll share some tips at the end as to exactly how we can bring more focus into our armory. So that's the layout for the session today. We're going to jump straight in with the science. It's not too daunting, do not fear. If you think of focus and attention as being like your brain's conductor, it leads the orchestration of our minds. It directs our brain power towards the things that we want it to focus on, the problems we want to solve. But as science tells us more about how our attention works, we're also learning more about distraction. And essentially, it comes down to this. The way of our modern life embraces distraction. It diminishes our ability to be brilliant. Now, distraction has always been a human condition. This is nothing new. But what is new is how technology in particular has made distraction ubiquitous in modern life and in modern work. And we've come to sort of accept, without even realizing it, a daily working pattern of endless interruption and distraction that hinders our ability to focus and achieve the things we want to get done. We're about 10 years in now to this era of constant connectivity, where we're always online, always available, always reachable. And that world of science and research is only really starting to catch up now and show just the extent to which our basic ability to focus and get things done has really come under threat. So there's 3 specific areas where this is a particular issue. I'm just going to touch briefly on each of them. Work fragmentation, multitasking, and email interruption. So we'll start with that first topic of work fragmentation.
One of the leading people in this field is an interruption scientist called Gloria Mark, who even knew that interruption scientists were a thing, but they're important. She describes a portrait of work fragmentation where we spend a great portion of our days just trying to piece together our thoughts and projects back together. And the result is very often just an accumulation of broken pieces that jar and don't fit together, and we're unable to create anything valuable. So she spent a considerable period of time studying workers at 2 high-tech firms for more than 1,000 hours over the course of an entire year. Gloria Mark sifted through all of this data, and she wasn't looking forward to seeing what the results were, but when she actually did, she was utterly appalled by it. The fragmentation of work life, she said, was far worse than she could ever have imagined. Her study found that workers spend on average just 11 minutes on a project before they switch to something else. 11 minutes spending doing one thing before we have to go elsewhere. I mean, what can any of us actually hope to achieve in 11 minutes? Probably nothing of high quality, nothing that's going to be personally fulfilling, and nothing that's going to add real value to our business. In your work, and you'll come from a variety of different companies with different priorities, but the work that you do that requires insight and creativity and planning and smart thinking, we need to ask ourselves this really straightforward question. Is a fragmented 11 minutes of concentration ever going to allow you to reach your solution? So there are a few more numbers just to highlight how distracted we are during our working hours, how pervasive this issue is. And to her surprise, she found out that it was nearly 45% of these workplace interruptions didn't come from elsewhere, they came from ourselves. They were self-initiated. We were struggling to concentrate on our own stuff. We were always looking elsewhere. This isn't just about technology distracting us and its pervasiveness. It's just as much about our own lack of ability to maintain concentration and stay focused on one task for an extended period of time. And when we interrupt ourselves, we go off on a new tangent and we get lost in other work. And the studies show that it takes about 28 minutes on average to pull ourselves back to our original task. Interestingly, that's longer than when technology interrupts us. Think of that average of 28 minutes. Sometimes you'll go back to a task immediately. Sometimes you'll forget you were even doing it, and it'll be a day before you come back to it. Another study estimated that in total, interruptions can take up to 2.1 hours of an average knowledge worker's day. And whilst this study was conducted in the US, they tried to put a financial figure on that to demonstrate the effect it was having on the economy. And that number was this. It cost the US economy $588 billion a year. So those numbers can be quite scary in and of themselves, but ultimately they come down to this point. More and more researchers and scientists are stating that the erosion of focus should be one of the top concerns for all businesses. The reality that we find ourselves in is that we are individually less and less able to concentrate on something. We're less able to think deeply. We're unable to mine a vein of inquiry for any period of time. And we kind of know this intuitively, but to see it borne out in numbers like that is quite stark, and the warning signs are there for all of us to see. So we need to recognize that knowledge work can't be done in sound bites.
So we're increasingly distracted and our attention is pulled in different directions. And for many of us, the solution to this challenge we face every day at work is multitasking, the art of multitasking, the ability to get lots done in a quick space of time by flitting between tasks or tapping out an email while sitting in a meeting. You might even be doing it right now. And multitasking seems an obvious solution here. We're busy, we get more done. But multitasking assumes that we can concentrate just as well on two things at the same time, or we can flip very easily between two different thoughts, ideas, topics. And again, research shows that we simply can't. What we do when we multitask is we give a shallow, superficial level of attention to each task that we flip between, and we never really get under the skin and use the full capacity and power of our brain in the way that we would like to. So study after study has shown this and has given us some real numbers as to why multitasking harms our productivity rather than benefits it. And some headline figures from this are that when people multitask compared to monotasking, doing one thing at a time until they're all done, while we feel busier, multitasking actually takes 25% more time to get the same work done. So doing three things separately, one at a time, is 25% quicker than if you try and flip between them, even though we might feel like we're making slower progress. And not only is multitasking slowing us down, it's making us more wrong as well. We make 50% more mistakes when we multitask, precisely because we're not fully in the moment of what we're doing. A bit of our mind is still somewhere else, and we don't have the same attention to detail and focus as we do when we focus solely on one task. So multitasking slows us down and makes us less intelligent, and we make more mistakes. But even while I'm saying that, it feels wrong. You know, the myth of multitasking is a powerful one. It's a myth that dies hard because it feels good. When we're busy and we're ticking one job off and managing to sit in a meeting whilst also reading a document, we feel like we're getting loads done at once and we're flying. We can tick things off our list and feel that we're cheating the reduced timescales and the heavy workloads that we've got against us. But as we said, we might feel busier, but we're doing it less well. Much as we might get a little boost of adrenaline when we feel good from getting a task done, that is deceiving us. Multitasking causes a loss of speed, of accuracy, and of wisdom. And if we want to do our best work and do it faster, we need to step away from that temptation to multitask and find a way of just doing one thing at a time. And there's a video we'll attempt to play here which sort of sums up the perils of multitasking better than we can. I'll give Alex a moment to try and play this. Playing a video inside a video conference is always a bit like something from Inception.
Challenge work.
It never quite worked, but this makes the point that, you know, across the generations, we're all trying to multitask, and we tend to assume that younger people in particular can multitask better because they've just grown up in this distracted, tech-filled world. But as this shows, regardless of age, it's a problem for all of us.
If you asked me the last time I did a thing and just did it and wasn't also trying to do something else, I wouldn't be able to tell you. What? Nope. Thought I had it. To be fully present on the internet at any given moment is a very rare thing. You're trying to write a paper, and so you've got that open in Google Docs, and then you're like, well, maybe I should read a little bit more about the thing I'm writing about, and then there's a link in there. You're like, this is a little tangential, but maybe it's interesting that I should know about meerkats. Ooh, the meerkats lay eggs. I didn't know that. Is that correct? And then there's videos of not just meerkats, but three-toed sloths. Oh my gosh, these things are actually like traded in inhumane ways. I should probably get involved with some sort of activism there. So you're like joining the Facebook page, telling your your friends like, this isn't right what we're doing to the sloths. And then you're like, who liked my sweet pics that I posted this morning on Facebook? Wow, it's my ex-girlfriend. Is she still into me? Maybe I'll spend 30 minutes composing a message that I never send. Or if I did send, that I then regret and spend the next hour composing a message retracting that. And then I'm like, whoa, I've gotten a lot done on my paper. Not. The way that technology is and the way that I interact with it has started to affect me in real life. Am I developing some sort of inability to focus because I never focus on things? I was like, well, maybe this is life mimicking internet, you know? So I started to do this thing, Tablets Thursday. It's where you don't really use the internet in a traditional way. You just sort of open a tab and use it. It's called single tasking. That's what I call it. So it's basically, if you were to do, it's like, instead of, like you just do one thing. It's like work, but on only one thing. This way you have to really make a value judgment and say, do I want to finish what I'm doing, or do I want to stop and do something else? You can click away if it's not interesting, but you close it, and it's done, and it's behind you, and it's not part of your life. It's like breaking up, and you can talk again, but you can't still be seeing that person because you moved on to a new thing. You can't still be with that tab. You know, that tab is behind you. It's not just about tabs. You know, tabs are a metaphor for life, right? And if you can just have one tab open and be doing it well, that's like you are fully present in the moment in this way that everyone is constantly. I think that's like in some religions, like the ultimate goal, right? I'm gonna misappropriate any religion that I might name here, but Buddhism.
Tablets Thursday?
It's Tablets Thursday, yeah.
Did you think about Tablets Tuesday?
Yeah, it's Taco Tuesday. Tablets Thursday. I don't doubt that you're probably doing something else right now while you're watching this. I hope maybe that you aren't. Because I know I would be watching also. I usually watch 2 to 3 videos at the same time. And I feel like I think I can take it in. But I couldn't tell you one video I've ever watched.
Tablets Thursday. An affliction that comes to us all. Now, if you just give me a second as I move on through the presentation, you might have noticed a couple of glitches in that, but it'll be, on the whole, hopefully it all made sense to you. So we are arriving at the third element about what the science is telling us, and this is around something that afflicts all of us, and it's our relationship with email. There's an increasing amount of research that explores the impact that email has on each and every one of us, and we know that a huge part of our daily work life is rooted in email and responding and reading. It's just how our businesses function. Yet many of us feel like we're fighting an unending daily battle just to stop ourselves from drowning in our inboxes. Everyone's individual experience of email is different depending on your specific role, but studies that look at averages demonstrate that we get interrupted about 288 times a day by email. That's not necessarily 288 emails. You might be going back to the same one a couple of times, or just noticing the ping and then going back to it and reading it later. But 288 individual eruptions a day caused by this one thing. And can you imagine if you were sat next to a colleague and they were tapping you on the shoulder 288 times a day? There might be somebody within your organization that is like that, but I'm pretty sure that that doesn't last for more than a day. You would have a word with them quite quickly and say, cut it out. So we all need to consider the volume of emails that we're receiving and sending. And we need to think more intentionally about how we use this tool. It's a tool that should be exceptionally beneficial for all of us. And it is a fantastic tool, but we need to consider them with greater levels of intention when email is the right vehicle to use and when it's not. There's another study in this area that shows that the average worker spends about 1/3 of their working week emailing. 28% of the working week spent sending and receiving emails. That translates to 2 hours and 36 minutes every single working day, or more than a day and a half every week spent exclusively on email reading and replying. If that might feel to you like it's a necessary and worthwhile use of time, and for many of us, it's utterly crucial, but we need to bear in mind that on average, we only tend to reply to 25% of the emails that we receive. So what we're saying there is 75% of the time, 3/4 of our time, we're interrupting our current train of thought to go into our inbox for an email that isn't important enough to warrant the disruption. It's either filed away, ignored, or deleted. We absolutely recognize that a significant chunk of the emails that you do send will be valuable, intelligent, thoughtful work that benefits you, benefits your clients. That is absolutely ideal. But there are also going to be times when it will be far more efficient and, not to say enjoyable, to either talk in person or talk over the phone. And obviously we're all craving in-person interactions at the moment, but just picking up the phone and speaking to somebody else rather than entirely relying on email is critical. Yet it's not a natural behavior because we've all become pretty lazy when it comes to email. It's become our default communication tool when sometimes it's simply not the best choice for these reasons. So, these 3 themes that we've probably depressed the hell out of you all with so far, the fragmentation of our working lives, the myth of multitasking, and this constant interruption of email, it's fair to say that these 3 themes are all destroying our collective productivity. The average person is productive for just 2 hours and 53 minutes in an 8-hour day. That's the equivalent of working productively until 5 to 5 on a Tuesday, then creating nothing of value for the rest of the week. We're all working harder than ever, and it certainly feels that way. And we've only seen just in this past week that we are doing longer hours even when we're working remotely. The average is creeping up. But even though we're working longer hours, we're just not giving ourselves the right conditions to make this additional effort really mean something.
So that's a bit of an introduction to why focus is such an important skill and how it's under threat. And what we want to talk about now very briefly is why this isn't just important but urgent that we give it our attention, and why it should be a priority for businesses across the spectrum. And again, this goes back to the science and what science is telling us about our brains. It used to be thought that the adult brain was pretty fixed, pretty set in its ways. The skills you learned, you had, things you couldn't do, you never could do. But again, more research, more neuroscience, more research from biology is showing us that our brains are actually constantly changing, even in adulthood. Every new habit and experience literally changes the connections in our brains. There's a snappy quote from a biologist here that illustrates this, that the cells in our brains literally develop and grow bigger with use and atrophy and waste away with disuse. So just like our muscles, if we don't use the skills that are hardwired in our brain, they cease to be hardwired in our brain and they waste away. We lose that ability. It's why I can no longer remember any of my GCSE French, although sometimes I wish I could. Those skills don't stay in our heads, they evaporate. The actions that we do the most become the stronger, bigger pathways. And another quote to remember this is, cells that fire together, wire together. Those skills become embedded. So when it comes to focus, that means that the more that we scroll and flick and swipe and skim read, the more we multitask and switch from writing a document to reading an email to texting a friend, those approaches become more natural. and the skills of focusing and paying attention and resisting distraction waste away and atrophy with disuse. To put it more bluntly, as this quote does, we're actively training our brains to pay attention to all the crap that comes our way and not to fight that and stay focused on the thing that we actually want to get done. Again, our brain is like a muscle. If we don't use that skill of focused endeavor and concentration, we lose the neural pathways and so lose the ability to do it. If we train our brains to be good at cursory reading, hurried thinking, distracted attention, superficial learning, that is what we become. So it's quite a depressing picture we've done so far, and not really how you want to spend your lunch hour. So we're going to take it to a more positive place now with some good news. And the good news is that despite all of these doomsday scenarios that we've set out, we have the power to do something about this. It is within our control to change this picture. We can take the right steps to retrain and regain our brains. And even better news is that the individuals and the businesses that recognize this need and prioritize protecting our skill of focus will be the individuals and the companies that succeed, that gain an advantage, and that find ways of succeeding that others simply can't without this ability in their armory.
And this is a competitive advantage that can be seen in two really clear ways. The first is focus makes exceptional, brilliant, high quality work possible. The equations on screen at the moment are quite interesting. They're representative of our working life, and there are loads of different ways to slice time, and we're just going to take 1 hour at work. All of those equations that you can see on screen at the moment equal 60 minutes, but each one of them is an entirely different working experience. The number eventually might be the same, but the quality contained within it is not. The equation at the top is the only place out of all of those 4 examples where brilliant work can happen. However, the bottom equation is far more representative of our time in work. Even though we're disconnected physically from a lot of people, that is our experience as we are sat at home trying to work on a document and responding to our WhatsApp groups, our Slack teams, our Microsoft Teams commitments, trying to write 2 documents at one time and respond to emails. 15, 10, 5, 5, it's such a fragmented working experience, and this fractured time, all it is a mess of minutes where less meaningful, less valuable work can get done. Focused, deep thought for a decent chunk of time is the only way to produce higher quality work with fewer mistakes. That's the first benefit. The second reason that we want to share with you why focus can unlock your brilliance is that focus is quite simply a brilliant place to lose yourself. Many of you will have already heard of the psychological state called flow. This is where we're deeply immersed in a task, where we're giving it our full attention. You lose track of time, you lose track of yourself, you lose track of all the other problems, the peripheral things that otherwise dominate your mind. We're in a state of bliss, and we're blissfully lost. The green light is on and we are flying. Nothing can stop us. Neuroscience now shows exactly why being in this state is really fulfilling, why it's healthy and why it's positive. And it's because in order to facilitate that additional attention during periods of flow, 2 key regions of our brain deactivate. First is the portion responsible for self-criticism, and the other is the brain's fear center. So because of this, all of a sudden you experience freedom from that worry about failure. When you're in flow, that internal voice that normally nags us and says, that's not good enough, speak to somebody else, check that, you're probably wrong, you don't have the answer. That voice is quietened, and instead that internal voice becomes your cheerleader. And in flow, that reassuring cheerleader voice says, you can do that, the answer is in here somewhere, no problem. Human beings really are at their best when immersed deeply in a task. We're actually happiest when we're tackling and solving challenging work. That's when we feel good, not when we're faffing around, shuffling emails to and fro and only doing that fragmented stuff that we've already talked about. Focusing deeply and losing ourselves in flow is a critical skill, and it's one that we all need to harness if we're going to thrive in this fast-paced, relentless world of modern work. And just take a moment, I know it's a little bit small, but take a moment to look at these benefits of flow. Right? Who among us doesn't want moments of profound mental clarity? I think it's fair, particularly during 2020, that we all deserve moments of exhilaration when we can find them. We all want the ability to solve new problems. Focusing deeply and losing ourselves in flow is a vital skill that we need to harness. It's a positive psychological state, yet the truth is, most of us never, ever experience this state at work. So neuroscientists and psychologists combined believe that this is one of the reasons why workplace stress is increasing so much. We spend all of our time in this headless chicken mode, running from one thing to the next, ending the day absolutely exhausted, thoroughly knackered, but with nothing finished. We won't ever feel the joy of flow if we just continue to spend 11 minutes on each piece of work that we do. We need to find out ways we can carve areas for flow to come into our day, because flow is where we find our best selves, and it's also where productivity and our best work lives.
So, having set out the problem, the urgency and the reward of developing our focus, we want to spend the rest of the time we've got today doing something a bit more practical, giving you some practical approaches to bring focus back into your armory. We've talked theory, now we want to make this useful. So we'd like to share with you today 6 seeds of thought, 6 ideas about how we can bring focus back into our everyday. These are headlines. Clearly, this is a big topic. There's a lot to be said. So think of this as 6 seeds as the start of a personal challenge to supercharge your ability to focus. There's some practical ways that we can start to change our habits in work and introduce new working practices that just make it a bit easier for us to focus on the thing we want to get done and get it done with our full concentration. So the first of those 6 is pushing back on the need to respond immediately. Alex mentioned earlier that we're interrupted by email on average 288 times a day. When you add in all the different message platforms and phone calls, that may well be much more or less for you. But nevertheless, email and communication interrupts us whether it's a good time or not, and it does it multiple times across the day. What we'll often try and do is think, well, it's 1:15 now, I'll work till 1:45 and I just won't check my emails, and we sort of ignore them for a little bit. But research shows that even when we're doing that, those little pings of notifications we get, the little alerts, the little numbers appearing at the side of our screen that tells us there's an email waiting, it doesn't feel like they take a big amount of our attention away. It might be a little background dialogue thinking, oh, there's a few emails there, I hope it's nothing important. I wonder if it's so-and-so getting back to me. I'll deal with that in a minute. 15 minutes more, then I'll do it. Maybe there's a little bit of internal dialogue, but it doesn't seem a big deal. And yet, even that little bit of distraction and taking our attention away from what we're doing has been shown to reduce our working IQ by 10 points. So that's huge. 10 IQ points of intelligence has gone because there's a little notification in the bottom of our screen that's taken a little bit of our mental concentration away. So just ignoring emails doesn't work. The only way to avoid the distraction of notifications, whether on email or your phone or wherever, is to turn them off, to not have them open in the background. And immediately that might seem idealistic. You know, I work in a business where people need to get hold of me, whether it's clients or colleagues. I can't just go off grid. The way we have always dealt with this, so we used to work in an agency where we were very client facing, and the way we find works is to find yourself a convenient time to close down your inbox, and then put an out of office up that says, I'm focusing on a complex task right now, or I'm doing some work on a priority. If you do need to get in touch with me, ring me on this number. Because that means that if people do need to get in touch with you, they still can just as easily as they ever could. But what you'll find is that what might be 100 emails might turn into 2 or 3 phone calls, because most emails aren't urgent. They can wait. Most people don't need to speak to you straight away. But as soon as we see an email pop in, we give it that urgency that it doesn't always deserve. So stepping away from messaging, making yourself contactable if it's urgent, but otherwise undisturbed, gives you a better chance of just keeping your mind on the thing you're trying to get done and not go down a rabbit hole of an email that takes you somewhere else. Emails aren't always as urgent as they seem, and having this filter is the only way to stop them really intruding on our work when they don't need to.
That's pushing back on the need for an immediate response. The next seed, the next idea that we're going to share with you is intentionally creating chunks of time to focus. Studies have demonstrated that we're able to maintain our highest level of concentration for 90 minutes, just 90 minutes. Any longer than that, we start to struggle. We hit the point of diminishing returns. Humans work far better when we pulse, when we just work in line with our natural biological rhythms, and these are called Ultradian rhythms. And they follow us throughout the course of every waking day. And most of us understand that we sleep in 90-minute cycles, but that pattern follows us through our day as well. And these are called Ultradian rhythms. So every 90 minutes, your energy dips and you need a pit stop to be able to recharge before you can go again and perform at an optimum level. So we're suggesting here about working in 90-minute sprints, where these 90-minute sprints should be high energy, full focus, zero distractions, as we've just talked about. And these are opportunities to enjoy a challenging task where you can lose yourself in work, absolutely immerse yourself in it, but then resurface, recharge, and come back into the world and interact with it. By recognizing that we can create and complete work of high quality if we remove distractions and focus fully for 90 minutes, our workday suddenly doesn't just feel like, what am I going to do this morning? What am I going to do this afternoon? What am I going to do when the kids go to bed? It becomes a day full of opportunity that we've previously not seen. 9:30 to 10:30, 11 to 12:30, 2 till 3:30, 4 till 5:30, 4 chunks within a pretty standard working day of really effective work. And it doesn't even need to be 4, but it just shows that we don't need to think of things in the old ways that we previously did. There is the potential to do brilliant, deep work at many points across the day. And even if you manage just to do one block of 90 minutes within your entire working week, that is going to be a massive improvement from the way that we currently all just run around in this chaotic mess. And think about that stat again. Think about that difference between doing something just for 11 minutes, giving something 11 minutes of your attention versus 90 minutes. The difference is going to be incredible.
The third seed of an idea we want to share really helps to make that 90 minutes more of a practical reality. Most of us work from a to-do list, which is essential in making sure nothing gets forgotten, but also a fairly blunt tool. A to-do list tells us all the things that we haven't yet done. It doesn't really give us a plan to do them. It doesn't help us prioritize. It doesn't help us plan the week. And frustratingly, the to-do list never seems to be entirely ticked off and done. What we're advocating here is a switch from using a to-do list to a technique called time boxing, which essentially means transposing your to-do list onto your calendar, like this shows here. So it's never a good time to think, right, I'll sit down now and do 90 minutes of focus on something. We need to plan in advance. So putting all your tasks for the week in your calendar like this forces you to think, well, what needs to happen when? What are the time sensitive things? Where in the day can I find 90 minutes to focus on that? If it's a collaborative thing, when's someone else available? And in modern times, do I need to be at home to do that, or away in a coffee shop, or in the office maybe? Thinking about our week in advance, planning our tasks in advance, means we've got more chance of doing them, of finding those 90 minutes when we need them, and of prioritizing in the right way. It takes all of that procrastination out of, I've got so much on, I don't know what to do next. I'll just do the easiest thing because it's a tick. This gives us a plan to get through the week rather than a list of problems to solve. And this might seem a bit idealistic. You know, we've all been in that situation, 10 o'clock on a Monday morning when a phone call comes in and your whole week plan goes to pot. You might need to rewrite this plan 2, 3, 4 times over the week. But again, if you were still working on a to-do list, you'd still have to add the same tasks to your to-do list. They wouldn't go away. So the fact that we have to replan and rejig a little bit might take a few minutes to do, but means we've always got a plan as to how and when everything that needs to happen can happen. It avoids the mental effort and energy of thinking, right, what next? What next? How do I get to the next thing? And the stress of uncertainty of when to do what. And it gives us a fixed idea in the day as to what's happening when. And an added bonus to this, if you're in a company that has shared calendars, it shows that that Thursday afternoon where you've got no meetings penciled in isn't free time for people to take. It's not you being idle. It's actually filled up with tasks that need to get done. So it helps you to protect your time for the tasks that need them, rather than your calendar just looking like an opportunity for people to put meetings in when you don't have anything on. So there's a lot online, there's a lot to read about time boxing. It's not a technique that we've devised, so there's a lot to read out there, which we'd recommend. But essentially, the more you can put structure into your to-do list by planning it in your diary, the better chance you've got of finding the time you need to do the jobs you do without everything else competing at the same time.
Number 4, do the most important thing first. And this is just building on the idea of investing more thought into how you plan your day. And it's a really simple but hugely effective ritual that can increase your productivity. And it's just to keep this phrase in mind: do the most important thing first. We often just, come into the office and think, or open our laptops, read our email, and let that dictate the rest of our day. But this idea of doing the most important thing first means that you're deciding in advance what you want to achieve. And then you're able to put 90 minutes of undistracted time as the first thing that you do in your working time, whenever that starts, whether it's 6 in the morning or 10 in the morning, whenever it works for you. But the first thing that you do, that's what you can focus on. So consider doing 90 minutes solo work on the most important thing, even before you log on and do your team meetings, or you go into the office and see other people. I think most of us can appreciate that, when you walk through the door or you make yourself available on an online piece of software, we're vulnerable to somebody stealing time from us. Just can I have 5 minutes? Can I have a quick call or just a quick question? So maybe some days entirely disconnect. Just consider getting your most important task done before you make yourself available to anybody else in the organization. It becomes a really powerful ritual if you can start to make it a habit. Above all, it's just a way to ensure that you devote time each day to your most important and most challenging and most fulfilling work. And with that, it becomes really energizing, because if you launch each day with a strong dose of focused productivity, you head into the rest of the day secure that no matter what happens, if the whole day gets blown to hell, it doesn't really matter, because you've already accomplished something really significant.
There is one place in the world where focus lies, where people don't distract us, where we're able to concentrate and lose ourselves in something without even a whisper of distraction from someone else. And that's a library. We all know the rules when we walk into a library. You don't talk, you don't have your phone on, you don't shout across the room to someone. You tiptoe in and you put your bag and coat down as quietly as you can, because you respect everyone else's focus and attention. Libraries are great for focus, but they're a lot different to our standard office or even the conditions we have working from home. Our offices are much noisier environments where people do shout across, where we hear each other's phone calls, where we'll go over and tap someone on the shoulder and ask for 2 minutes of their time. And even when we're working from home, we might, in theory, have the settings of a library, but people will much more comfortably reach out and connect with us and disrupt us than they would if we were all sat together in the reading room of a library. So there's a technique here of introducing library rules to your everyday. Now, this isn't to say we all want to work in silent exam conditions all the time, but it means for those times where we're working at home, we maybe have set hours of the day where, unless we really have to, we don't interrupt each other. Maybe between 11 and 1 every day, maybe every Wednesday and Thursday, maybe every afternoon, maybe the second half of every hour is a time where, unless you really have to, you don't disturb each other. All the times outside those library times are therefore times you can collaborate, where you can pick the phone up and catch up on what's happening next on a project, or offer someone some support, or ask a second opinion, or share an idea or a problem. It's really important to have collaborative times as well as focused quiet times, but setting boundaries that establish which is which allows people to focus when they need to focus and come together when they need to. In the more everyday world of being in an office, which I know not all of us are at the moment, when we get back to those office scenarios, this can be about having a specific area. Maybe it's a meeting room, maybe it's a quieter corner of the office where library rules persist, where people can go and work for an hour or two if they need to really focus on something, away from the phones and the background chat and the water cooler and the coffee machine. Whether it's a physical space or a specific time, carving out opportunities in the day to have quiet, library-like conditions to focus in makes it much easier to do that practice of focus and to zone in on the thing that we want to do without distraction.
The sixth and final idea that we want to share with you before you venture off into your afternoon of productive work is this idea, and it's around building stamina. Most of us simply aren't used to focusing our attention on one thing at a time, so we do need to recognize that it's going to feel really difficult at first. If you're engaged by what we've said, if you think it's something that you'd like to try and you benefit from, we need to recognize that we can't just stop these habits that have embedded themselves in our current working reality. We need to build it up. It's going to feel really difficult. 90 minutes might be quite far away for a lot of us. So we start small, and we need to be patient. And then you need to adopt a training mindset. Understand that this is something that you're going to have to build up incrementally over time. So the challenge to all of you here is to start with 5 minutes of undistracted time, whether that is a commute if you're still doing it, whether it's just a moment at home where you can look out of the window. But the minute that you feel boredom start to creep in, set yourself that challenge of not picking up your phone, not looking at it, just allowing yourself to sit, allowing your mind to rest. If you're standing in the queue at Tesco, just try and wait rather than giving your brain that instant hit of distraction that it's telling you it absolutely craves. Stand in the queue, look at other people, just take things in around you rather than just retreating to that solace of your phone. Start by going for a walk, leave your phone at home, walk around the block and see how it becomes really easy to get over that initial separation anxiety. Who knew that that is how devoted we were to all of our devices? If you're lucky enough, and I'm sure we're all furiously rechecking which tier we're in today, if there's anywhere around you that you're able to go out and have dinner with a friend, and they go to the loo, then leave your phone alone, just sit and be. See what everybody else makes of that around you. Much of this training and rewiring your brain is all about your behavior outside of work just as much as it is inside. So remember that point we made earlier about we need to build all these new neural pathways. We need to rewire our brains to be content enough to just sit and embrace boredom, because boredom isn't bad. We need to wean ourselves off the need to always have something in front of us, to always be constantly stimulated, but recognize that this is a big challenge for all of us. It requires patient endurance, because that is precisely what this is. It's endurance training for the brain.
So we hope we've caused you to think differently about focus today, and we've convinced you that it's a skill that's worth saving. Focus is how we become more productive and make more of our time. It's how we avoid the stress of multitasking and trying to balance competing priorities. It's how we regain control of our mind and our work. But it's not something we can just turn on when we need it. It's a skill that we need to build and maintain in the same way that we build and maintain our physical fitness. And there are changes we can make to help us best develop and rewire our brains to allow us to make the most of their potential, to stop paying attention to all the noise and instead prioritize the meaningful and the important, and to prioritize focus before it becomes a lost skill that we used to have but now find harder to grasp. Focus is the most important skill of the 21st century, and it is absolutely vital that we rescue it. And I hope we've given you a flavour of that this afternoon.
So thank you very much, every one of you, for spending this hour with us. We know that this is just a short introduction to a really complex, fascinating and critical topic, and we just wanted to leave you with the 5 essential skills that we believe every business, every individual needs to master in order to unlock high performance. And this is what we at 4 and 20 million specialize in. So we've given you an idea of why focus is critical, and our solution to that is better, faster, smarter. That is something that we actually run as a modular course for teams over a much longer period of time, exploring these concepts in depth and giving people practical tasks, new ideas, and trying to help people take these skills and embed them into their day-to-day experience of work. Similarly, across leadership, collaboration, storytelling, and self-awareness, we offer courses in all of these areas. So if this is something that you feel you'd like to learn more about, or that your businesses might well benefit from, we would love to hear from you. That is everything from us today. Hopefully that it's far less than 90 minutes, which is the idea. But if anybody does have any questions or would like to ask us anything about what you've heard there, then we will stick around for a while. If not, we will not be offended if you feel the need to go off and have your lunch.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I've learned an awful lot in that presentation, and most definitely we'll be putting those things into practice. So thank you, guys, both of you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carol. Cheers.
Appreciate your time, Carol. Thank you.
Oh, and that was me, by the way.
Hi, there you are. Yeah, we often just see a lot of black spaces and names, so it is nice. Thank you for saying hello.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you. It was exceptionally brilliant. Hope I can use lots of that to get focused. It's an area I think we're all struggling with at the moment.
Yeah, it's particularly challenging. You know, I think when we all started working from home, it initially felt, oh, we'll get away from all these distractions then. It's just me at home. Hopefully in a quiet house it'll be easier, but it's absolutely not. And I think as sort of remote working has gone on, we've become more aware that these challenges are as much there when we're sat at home by ourselves as they are when we're in a big office. So yeah, hopefully these tips are as applicable to home working in some cases as they are for office working. And yeah, I think we need all the support we can get at the moment in helping us get the most out of our days. So thanks, Tricia, it's really, really kind.
Very keen to get my 4-year-old to understand library rules within my own home environment. It's a bit of a struggle, but we're working on that part.
I think you get used to being constantly interrupted when you've got children, don't you?
Yeah,
that's part of it. It's like you learn it when you have kids, and then it's difficult to forget, and then you start bringing it to work, I think.
I think we used to see a celebration of multitasking, and there was a period where it was utterly fashionable. It's fashionable to be busy, and I know that somebody I used to work with used to describe themselves on Twitter and then LinkedIn and everywhere that they could promote themselves as a multitasking director and mummy, and it's. But what you notice with those situations is you're constantly balancing things, or your attention might be half on your kid and half on your work, and you're probably not doing a great job of either. That even if it's a momentary focus on, right, I'm going to put this hat on now, I'm going to be a mum, I'm going to be a dad to my son for the next 10 minutes, leave my phone away, ignore the emails and just read a book or something, even if it's only for 10 minutes, then I'm going to go and do that email. And like we saw, you end up doing these things quicker, saving yourself a little bit of time, and you're less harried at the end of the day. But we do celebrate busyness over productivity, and it's a habit that's very difficult to get out of. And we find when we introduce these concepts, there's very often a fair bit of pushback from people. You know, that's just how my job is, or I need to be attached to my email all the time. Currently, I'm going through a process of moving house, and I know that my solicitor would say that, well, I just need to be on email all day and respond to things as and when they come in. It's not the right tool for it. It's absolutely not. It's like these long protracted days could be utterly eradicated with one phone call or a designated hour of this is my interaction time. Everybody would know it, rather than just sitting constantly refreshing and distracting yourself throughout the course of a day. There are always solutions to these things, but there's a sense of comfort in our own busyness, but we don't have to be quite as harried as we often make out.
Definitely. I mean, we've been thinking about mental health in our office, and I think this has got loads of messages for that, actually. I mean, I've been more struggling to concentrate end of things, and that's because, like you say, I allow myself to get distracted, and then I wonder whether there's like an introvert extrovert things with it as well. That whole 90-minute thing, I wonder whether, you know, perhaps some of the introverts are loving it, working from home, minimizing distractions, but then they probably end up working longer, or push out a task for longer potentially if they shut out things, and they need to be reminded to take a break, kind of thing. I think there's loads of stuff I could take back to the office from this, so it's been really, really useful, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we do a lot with psychometrics, and you do tend to find, sort of in a very quick nutshell, that more introverted people are a bit happier being at home working by themselves, but they're also much more likely to obsess over details and spend longer and longer. So you might not know it because they're not in the office, but they're likely working longer and longer because they're more perfectionists. Whereas on the other side of the scale, more extroverted people, who are normally the most confident and bubbly and positive in your office, and sort of the ones who lead all that positive environment, they are finding it much harder because they thrive off that interpersonal connection. So we speak to a lot more extroverted people who are normally the life and soul, and are now in the position of, am I finding this so hard? I'm normally the upbeat. I can't let people know that I'm actually really struggling with it. So I think at both ends of those spectrum, there's negative to the situation. You know, mental health is such a big topic this year, and yeah, everything we can do to try and lighten the burden on people a little bit, and show that, you know, that this situation we all find ourselves in isn't unique to us. You know, we're all faced with this challenge of trying to be productive and keep ourselves motivated and connected when we're sat at home with all of this going on around us. It's not easy for anyone, and I think the more we can acknowledge some of these challenges and give people ways of doing something about them, it makes it less of a personal battle and more of a collective endeavour.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really good. We've got these 6 points. I think they're useful to share with everybody. I think it could be on the email as well, though. You've got like Teams, Skype, groups. Do you know what I mean? And we've got all of those things just for work. You know, it is kind of, and then ringing. Sometimes you'll be on a Skype call and someone's ringing you on Teams, or vice versa. It's crackers. But anyway, yeah, no, that was really useful. I'll let you go, but thanks for that. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for the feedback and for showing your face. So it's nice to see you.
Well, I thought when we was, getting into a bit of chat, I'd say hi, but sometimes it's like, the tech fails as well, doesn't it? Sometimes with the video. So be safe on that one.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.